for our personal contacts and connections. And we thought, well, how about we bring some of this together and help create a bit of a framework for businesses so that they could use this as a set of tools for navigating through the fog, and create a forum for conversation amongst the businesses and with each other. The idea was kind of founded, I suppose, on the idea of a checklist. We were inspired by the fact that doctors and nurses, not least at the moment, have an ingrained checklist that they use to ensure, if at all possible, minimum mistakes when they're in the midst of this incredible storm that they're going through, and enhance medical outcomes. Not just today, but every day. That's what their life is like. In the same way that the pilots are trained over and over and over again with routines, using checklists, that when the time comes, recovery from any impending disaster is just a reflex action. So I guess we were inspired by that. We're thinking to ourselves, well, how about in the chat this afternoon, we hope maybe we can come up with a checklist that you folks could use, all of us could use in our own businesses. So it's very much about just getting the conversation started, and then having this chat amongst us as a group. So to get us started, I'd like to introduce you very briefly to Frank Zijlstra, who was formerly the global CEO of Expedia and Booking.com. Now there's an industry that's taken quite a hit. But in Frank's case, he also has a much wider experience and expertise in strategy through his long career in business. And he's the key panel. So Frank, you want to just quickly wave at everybody so they know the other guy I'm talking about. And a little bit hidden away is this mysterious voice of Len Yonkers, who's very kindly helping to co-host any questions and the chat line, as it were. But Len is himself a serial entrepreneur, a business advisor, and an investor. And we're collaborating on a number of different things, but mostly also to deal with any Q&As that arise. So we're already, it seems, dealing with the mute function and unmute function, so we're good. But when you're not speaking, perhaps you could just remember to keep things on mute so there's any background noises don't come through. With that, just those few words, let me just hand over to Frank. Over to you, Frank, to give us your interpretation of the idea behind 100 days, 1,000 days. And then maybe I'll come back in with a little bit more around some of the themes that we might develop as a checklist. So, Frank, you're on mute at the moment. There we go.
There we go. Thank you, Leonard, for helping out, and thank you for having me and sharing some of the thoughts around this horrible event that has all put us in over the past few weeks. As you already described, Shai, I think some very positive elements are truly coming from this. And in our discussion last week, we also talked about hey, it's maybe a good time to reflect and take a step back and look at our amazing family life, which we're very close to these days. But which reminded me of hey, what is thinking of people like in a situation like this. We're all in the same situation, the same challenge, and every business is hurt, and some others more than others. Some have maybe even bigger opportunities as they're somewhat more online, and they seem to be dealing better with the situation. But if I truly think about what's happening, it's about us, all people, having a relationship and asking people how we're doing. This is not only a question we can ask our customers how they're doing, but also suppliers and partners we have, and the people we work with. So I think if you check with everybody around you, like what's truly going on and what's the effect. Empathy starts to develop more, and sometimes something we forget in business is that we're truly working all with people around us. A great opportunity to spend somewhat more time truly thinking what is happening now and what's happening to others and what can they share. And before we start thinking about how can we be safe and it's like, and what should we do with our cash, there's truly a moment where we can take an opportunity to reflect with customers, partners, people we work with, and see how everybody's doing.
So Len, I think it seems very interesting for me actually that while your job title was CFO Global, you're actually starting with checking on the welfare of your customers and your partners rather than by saying how much cash have you got left to run the business.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right, does it?
I think it sounds perfect, but does that assume that you have enough cash in the tank, as it were, or in the bank that helps you see your way through being able to think about the welfare and what I would call the kindness principle in business rather than the brutal principle of business?
Yeah, but this is someday this situation is going to be done. And and I think it's like the way you framed it, it's 100 and 1,000 days. And yes, we need to survive. But going through the pain all together, making sure you have a great understanding of what your customer is and what they're going through. If I think back of my time at Expedia, and I still have many friends with Expedia, their challenge is to have tons and tons of cancellations. Now, can you tell your customers like, hey, we're not going to cancel because we have a no cancellation on this specific booking? So there's no go areas in this time. So we need to listen and we need to understand what the specific circumstances are. And I think it's like if we do it the right way, then in 1,000 days, the world will look different. And we will have that special relationship with our customers, with our partners. And the ones that are going to say now, it's like, hey, we're going to focus on cash and cash is king. And it's the only thing we're going to focus on. I think as a CFO, you would destroy everything around you and you will stay safe. But what do you have left when you've finally arrived at 1,000 days? If like you don't have the right partners anymore, you've scared away the best talent you have in your company. It's going to be a very expensive trip afterwards to re-find your customers again as well. So I think this is definitely a time when it's not only about cash and the hard numbers. This is also a time where we need to stay close to one another and figure out like how we're going to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that opening remark, Len. Let me just invite any questions that are kicking around as a result of your conversation. Maybe just to give us a signal or a video to come on and ask Len or myself any questions. Then I have a few more remarks I'd like to make. And just tell us where you're from as well as you ask the question, if you'd like to. So I know Steve, it's early in the morning. Steve told off, if I recognize that you've got light behind you, is in Canada, I guess, right? Do you want to unmute, Steve?
Yeah. Shai, it's really great to see you. Yes, it's Vancouver and it's just after 8 in the morning, but I've been working here since 3. One of the challenges since I took your program is I got married and I had we have a little one, and one of the challenges with all that is making things happen. And it's not just the breakup of decision makers in the business and focusing on the business, that 100 and 1,000 days and things like that. It's also in their home. And it's how their partners are adapting and adjusting to their new reality as well. And sometimes it's having to put up with me more often. And one of the challenges with putting up with me, I've found out is I found out there's lots of them, but beyond that, the reality is that each family is different, and as I go and I apply that mentality, I go and say, okay, well, as was just being discussed, how do you go and focus on making sure your family's safe and secure and healthy, while at the same time being financially, confident that the world's not going to implode today, but you still have something that you're growing into rather than something that you're staggering along and you're not sure how things are going to be in 1,000 days, 3 years. So for me, one of the things that I've been working on, basically since the beginning of the year, as I saw this coming in from my friends in China, and then as I saw it starting to really ramp up here in North America and obviously in Europe, is I started really consuming a lot of information to try to help me personally get through this. But as I go and do that, I talk to my customers and the people that support me as consultants or as doing ad hoc work. And I've found that you're absolutely right with respect to making sure your network is healthy. And as your network is healthy, it's amazing how the tide raises all the boats at the same time, rather than just going and saying, you know what, I've saved myself on my little pier and there's nothing but despair around me. Yeah. And it's when the mindset is one of efficiency, your business tends to not actually be all that resilient. It tends to be quite focused, and as a result, as soon as that area of that made your business successful and efficient and profit making in itself, it stops being able to adjust to new realities. Yeah. And my customers that I've been doing projects with as a consultant, or as I go and build into new roles and new products and services, we're just basically finding that the way we used to do business for some people is completely over, and that's just after like 3 months worth of crazy. What happens if this extends another 3 months and 50% of
Steve, the impression that things are just as tight for you in Canada as they are in in Europe.
I could go on forever.
But you've gone straight to the heart of it, which is, it's not just about the business, it's about trying to operate a business from home, and therefore how you balance out, home life with business life. I see another friendly face there that I recognize, which is in Paul North. Hiya, Paul. And I know you were doing a lot of work in the area of providing robust data for businesses so that they could build. How are things going for you? How do you see the 100 days and 1,000 days?
Well, it's very interesting for us. Hi, nice to see you all. So we basically provide a product to the SME world that can extract data from your accounts package, ERP system, whatever, and give you, managers and users in the business really quick access to that data. Mostly we focus on really sales, stock, and purchasing kind of information. But we've been looking quite a bit. Our customers are really looking for particularly debt and credit control in a bit more, in a bigger way than we're doing. So we emailed all of our customers around 2 and a bit weeks ago when this was really beginning to kick in, and said, look, we're still here. We're home based pretty much as a business anyway, so that's not caused us any real issues. But we know that looking at all the things with business loans and whatever else, being on top of your data in your business every day rather than every month is now even more critical than it was before, and it's things that we can help with. Our customers are mostly used to that. And we dropped a note to all of them and said, is there something we can do to help you in the current difficulties? Because we knew that there will be odd little reports that people might find helpful, just different ways of looking at a particular bit of the data that they've already got. And it was the response was interesting. About half of our customers came back and said, that's really kind of you to ask, but we're fine.
Right.
About a quarter of them came back with, that's really kind of you to ask, and we'll think about it and we'll come back to you. And the other quarter sent us quite a long list each. And which we've been working through. And it's, I mean, a really good one that we're rolling out a bit more is we have one customer, they're in a distribution business where they've got a big warehouse full of perishable items, and pretty much all of the businesses they sell to are no longer trading at the moment. Wow. So they suddenly owe quite a few £1 million to people, and they have quite a few people that owe them some £1 million who haven't got the money to pay them. So they have an aged creditors list. They also have a list of the goods that are due to be coming in their door that they've ordered and they're going to have to pay for. And they have another list of things that have arrived in the system, but they've not yet been told how much they owe for it. All of that data is across the system, but they need to join it together to actually work out. So here and now, how much do I owe and to whom?
I think this is really interesting, Paul, because when you get caught in the headlights like this with the impending sense of disaster, maybe you don't even look at the basic stuff like a spring clean of your own numbers, you know. Yeah. I mean, my simple analysis would be we've had a good clear out of our utility room here at home. Causes a clear houses of crap. It's a bit like that, really looking at the numbers in detail, which speaks to what Steve was saying about amassing data. Yeah. And Frank's comments about trying to understand and help your customers out. So connecting those two. Just briefly, just before I come back to you folks, I picked up somewhere along the line some tips and tricks basically on how to keep a team together, because this team spirit is a big question here, right? And I saw a really good role model, and I'll call on our friends who are I can see in the black boxes there to comment. But one of the companies has instituted a video call over coffee every morning at 9 o'clock, just to keep the good news flowing and keep the team motivated, if you like. And they've introduced things like calorie counting and puzzles or whatever, just to be social for half an hour, because we're all going a little bit crazy, I suspect, working these long hours in front of our screens. Of course, we've already talked about cash flow and checking it, and Paul, you've made helpful remarks about how the daily data is more important than maybe a weekly, monthly check, especially at the moment. There's another thing that's flowing in our direction, which has come about because I've spent the last 4 days over Easter break working with my former colleagues at Cranfield on a low-cost ventilator that they've designed with Georgia Tech, and how that might go into India. And what I've realized in doing my own homework on that, which is Steve's point, there is so much information on public resources now on how to cope with this crisis. There are checklists all over the place. And of course, the Pim, as he's still on the call from Silverstone Technology Cluster, Pim has given huge lists via his various channels on the STC. Then I saw the National Chemical Laboratories, NCL Venture Center in India, in Pune, do exactly the same thing for all their members. And the C Camp in Bangalore and various other places. So for those of you that are looking to networks, looking for actually practical support in things like the taxes and borrowings and banks and all that kind of stuff. So those are now beginning to populate the various communication channels. And I suspect you folks are already well on top of all of that. So we won't need to spend more time. Then I've seen some really weird stuff, which I have to say, a little bit of a red flag for me, is people posting their rants on Facebook, okay, and saying how nice it is not to have to go to meetings, quote unquote, bloody meetings. And you think to yourself, your customer's going to see that, buddy, and at some point they'll remember that they were a nuisance to you. So I think this is a very interesting time when people are going crazy in all sorts of different ways. But on the basis of social interactions within the team, can I call on Shiraz or Praful just to make a couple of points on that topic. They're still on or they disappeared? Shiraz is there. Shiraz, hi Shiraz, can you hear me okay? And Mehrdad is there as well, hopefully.
Could you
Hi, I caught you by surprise.
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah. Shiraz, maybe you could just tell the group that's assembled what you're doing to keep the team together, and then I'd like to ask anybody else who've got comments on this to join the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Shai. Can you hear me?
Yeah, clearly. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so as we said, I think, I mean, at Corrosion Radar, we believe that the team is very important to get us through this and make sure that everyone is also not forget that they have their personal life, we have a business to run, and make sure that everyone is getting through this with all the support that we can give to each others. I believe there are three parts that we will probably be going through personally and a business level. And to summarize them are survive, revive, and thrive. So these three phases have to be in parallel. Survive is to make sure that we are, from a personal or business level, surviving this period. A lot of changes, a lot of effect on from different levels. Make from a business point of view also the cash. Make sure the team is supported. The team is supporting the business. Revive. Make sure that we are making really the changes that we need to make to bring back the business the level how it was before the coronavirus. And thrive. Be ready when things picking up. You are ready for up and running. And for all these phases, you need the team to support you, and therefore you need to support the team and make sure that mental health especially is supported, and make sure that people are not feeling alone. We have a lot of young people working for us from different European countries, so they are in shared homes away from their families. We have Spanish people from Spain, for example, where the situation were not going well at certain points. So a lot of fears and things going on through people in different way. So what we set up is a daily morning coffee where we just talk about, at 9 o'clock, to make sure that everyone is okay, and starting the day on the positive note, and where we talk about different things. And make sure that we check on each other. So that is, because for me, as I said, wherever phase we're going to go through, if you don't have a strong team and you don't support your team at this time, you would probably, you will survive, but you will survive with no team. So we're making sure that we are doing whatever we can to support each other at this time.
Thank you, Shiraz. Frank, any thoughts on that topic? On the topic, or general topic anyway, but especially the business of keeping the team coherent? Yeah, Frank, are you on mute?
I'm not on mute anymore.
No, good.
No, I really like how an early morning connection is being made with a team, and I think it's like what we're finding now as well, is that creating new habits is pretty hard. So I heard Paul talk with his customers about, it's like, hey, would you like to have new information? And there's a new situation that popped up. So if you're not on a daily routine with your cash, it's going to cost you quite a lot of effort now to actually set things up and learn to understand the data. So setting up new habits is quite challenging. So it's like, but there's maybe a good way to sort of start sorting out, like, hey, what are habits that we're doing really well? So what are the things we're truly strong at? And what are people around us that are very strong at some of the things we actually miss, some of the skills. And I'm amazed with how people want to help one another. And I'm truly impressed every day when I talk to others, and actually you get the question, how can I help you? And I can't remember, but maybe I didn't pay that that much attention to it. But let's say 6 months ago, that people were so willing to help each other. So we're not only asking, but we're offering, and we're actually doing that stuff as well, which is, in my mind, super impressive. So Corona, the COVID virus, has some great opportunities, and it's pushing us to new limits of like how we can actually work together. I've had so many stories about like, hey, you can't work from home. I've worked for Expedia, teams around the globe. I wish I could be with them every day, but it was just physically not possible. So Zoom and Blue Jeans, Skype gave me opportunities to call in, to check with teams. And it for me at that time, it was a daily routine. Now I see that many other companies start to create that daily new routine. And to come back to your initial question, it's like, hey, so figure out like, what are you doing really well? And what are the things where you would love to learn more about? And reach out to others. Everybody seems to want to help out nowadays, so reach out.
Yeah, I think it's a new atmosphere in business that I'm detecting. You're right. It's not quite the dog eat dog scenario we've seen. Taos, I haven't met you before, and maybe you could just give us your take. Which country are you in, or are you in the UK somewhere? Or
right now I'm in Denmark. Have spent a number of years in Cambridge.
Yes.
And well, I think the main challenge here, as I see it with the SMEs I've been working with, is a lot of companies I've been dealing with has physical products, so they're into physical distribution. And a little bit like Paul North was saying, well, you have a stock, you got some customers who have stopped paying, and how do I actually build my distribution going forward? Because the shops I'm selling to, or the ultimate retailers, they stop distributing, they stop selling. So how do I actually get back into the game of distributing my products? We used to, dealing with export markets, going out there, sending out export managers in market locally, visiting different countries. First of all, that probably needs to be rethought for a while, saying, okay, we probably need to look at engaging local people on a different level, perhaps taking things just like we are working in teams within our own businesses, then working more with our customer also on this digital level. But how will we as SMEs be impacted? How will the SMEs being impacted going forward with managing distribution chains? I think that will be a huge challenge, how to restructure the international expansion.
So your mind is already on the 1,000 days issue when you ask that.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
So to see people through, because you're right, things are changing so radically.
Yeah.
Longer term.
And we really don't know right now, how can we get out there and expand our business internationally, building the distribution chain, managing and maintain them the way we've been doing historically. How's that going to look going forward?
Well, just to connect up with what Frank said a couple of moments ago, we have to rethink. I mean, are we having to rethink the way that globalization itself will work? Because supply chains and so on are very much on global level, and yet that has proved to be a little bit of our undoing right now. So it's going to be an interesting. Maybe that's a 5,000 day question, not a 1,000 day question.
More like yes.
But Taos, we have met, haven't we? I now remember.
Yes.
As soon as you started speaking, I recognized that voice at my. Sorry, I didn't recognize it to begin with.
That's fine, Shai.
I see there is Kiran. Is that Kiran Salter? And if so, what's happening in your world of advanced engineering, Kiran?
Hi, Shai. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, indeed, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, like everybody, we're not completely in control of our own destiny, really. And I think that was the wake-up call that we had when we first started on this journey a few weeks ago. Is we believed that we could structure our business to continue to work regardless. But then we started to realise that we weren't completely in control of our supply chain. or our customers. And so one by one, those sort of those pathways kind of dried up, either from the top down or from the bottom up, which means, you know, that we've had to react daily to the situation that we find ourselves in, and adjust appropriately daily. And it is quite interesting how it changes people's perspectives. You know, we no longer have a group of people at work who think that, particularly some of the younger people, who think that a job is is mandatory and kind of a given, and it's kind of like take it for granted. And suddenly there's a realization that actually the world's quite fragile and the economy is quite fragile. And I think that's ironically been a bit of a positive. Right. You know, it will change the way people perceive their employment and how they interact with the companies that they work for. And we're seeing much more engagement in terms of how do we make sure we stick through this and get out the other side as a stronger business, rather than how are you going to do this for me and make sure that I've still got a job. So it's interesting, but you know, clearly there are some opportunities which have been highlighted in the press and the media around repurposing advanced engineering activities into other areas. Of course, that's possible, but I think we need to be realistic as well about how long that takes, and the fact that actually you still need, if you're a business, to make some money to pay the bills to do that job, and we can't just all suddenly become volunteers and start making stuff for people for free to solve a short-term problem. So it's a fine balance between where people think we should sit morally and where people think, you know, actually we need to sit financially and economically. But it's certainly been an interesting journey in terms of changing how we work and working from home and still trying to keep the business going.
Yeah. Frank, any reflections? Kieran's business is a high-tech advanced manufacturing business based on the Silverstone area. And they produce some quite amazing things. So they're both physical and online, I guess, in terms of working. And I guess, Kieran, most of your plant is closed at the moment? The offices and workshops?
Oh, yeah. Yes, so the offices are essentially closed to day-to-day activities. We took the decision quite early on and certainly sort of finalised that when the lockdown happened on the Monday. But we'd already set up all of our office-based, CAD-based engineering staff home with their own equipment so that they could all work remotely, and we tested that to make sure it was fully functional in case we had the full lockdown. But we wanted also to do that to make sure that the workshop activities where people had to come into the office, the factory to do jobs, was safe, so that we were limiting the amount of contact. So we did that as a preventative measure anyway. So yeah, we've got people working at home, and we still have some activities going on in the workshops.
Okay, Frank, I was trying to call you in and then I cut you off.
No worries. I really liked how Kieran phrased it around the millennial dilemma we sometimes run into, hiring young folks into our teams, and they haven't seen all the dynamics of an economy. And now they actually sees that, like, hey, my job is potentially not so secure, and the attitude starts to change, and it's something that as management, I think we often need to deal with. It's like, hey, we like young people that have new, fresh ideas, that have a different approach, and they're going to be the new generation. But on the other hand, it's like, hey, how do you deal with that attitude challenge sometimes? And I put a smile on my face when I heard Kieran say, it's like, hey, this is actually shifting now to a more positive attitude. It's like, hey, how can we do it? And I heard another element saying, it's like, hey, when we opened the shops again, we looked after everybody's safety. And I think that's what everybody is looking for at the moment. It's like sort of your first focus point. It's like, hey, where am I going to go? Am I going to be safe? And if as a team, that's one of the things you're going to take care of, people are going to trust more and are going to build more an attitude of building that team together and finding things to do now together. How can we actually get through it? And Really love the approach.
So if this is a time that's really testing our business resolve and our humanity at the same time, isn't it? It's such a tight balance between the two and how we swing in that direction. I see Tim Hill. If it's a Tim Hill, I know. Tim, you deal with the education sector.
Hang on, yeah. I was going to start my video even. Hello.
Hi there, Tim. Yeah, so what's your take on what's happening with regard to the sort of 100-day, 1,000-day rule?
I confess I haven't read your pre-read because I've been busy during the day, but as far as we're concerned, I mean, I echo some of the comments. I thought Shivaz's thoughts on survive, thrive and revive were very apt. I mean, as a business, I work for the Moller Institute. Look, I've even still got my logo in my bedroom.
Yes.
I'm head of marketing there, so I would have. So, but our business, as well as delivering leadership development work to businesses around the world, which we're doing a lot more now online anyway, pre-COVID, but we're obviously having to do a lot more of that now. The conference element and the meeting element has been hit badly, and we've closed down the centre in that respect, although we have been able to work with clients to push bookings, gradually backwards, but it's the uncertainty there, and we've furloughed a number of colleagues in the conferencing side. Yeah. We are, very proud that we are using the facilities. We've got 92 bedrooms on site. We're using 32 of those bedrooms to support frontline Addenbrooke staff. So that's
excellent.
But the whole sort of, it's fascinating times. The whole teamwork and all this checking in at 9 o'clock. We're doing a lot of that, and I've been surprised how different people have handled it in different ways. Some people that you thought would be very resilient and would be able to handle the ambiguity and the change around it that haven't handled it so well. And it's strange times. I mean, we're all spending more time with our families at home, which is a positive.
Yeah.
But as Frankie was saying, or somebody else was saying early on, it's the harsh reality that actually we've got to earn, we've got to generate revenue at some point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you're playing a bit of a waiting game at the moment to see how.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we've still got colleagues there liaising with clients and working with clients. So if you're organising an event, big conference or whatever next year or later this year, they're reassuring them and trying to do the best we can in terms of maximising getting people in that space, because the difficulty is the unknown. You'll be taking bookings in October. We've got a huge demand for that now, but we can't guarantee that it'll be all finished by October, I suppose.
Yeah, on the education, not only executive education side generally, they realise how incredibly dependent the UK is on business from China.
Yeah.
The postgraduate education levels, the number of courses and programs and products that I see, all depending on huge volumes of expenditure from China. And suddenly, for all obvious reasons, that's I was supposed to be going there. I was supposed to be there this month, actually, doing something, and obviously that's been pushed back. And when you talk about fears and anxieties, I wonder whether I should go when I get invited later in the year or early part of next year, or whether I become so much of an expert on Zoom that's the way I deal with all my life in future. So a couple of names I don't necessarily recognize, but please do come in with any comments you want to before we head back into the idea of this checklist. So put your hand up or just pick a little note saying you'd like to ask a question, because we've heard different comments here about effectively the robustness of the IT structure. Have you set up the infrastructure well enough to be safe? Have you set up the infrastructure so the IT works for everybody? I know that in one of the organizations, and I can't name it, there were hundreds of people in a secure environment in the defense industry who don't have access to laptops, right, for obvious reasons, because they're dealing with defense and secure lines. They're all sent to work from home. How the hell do you do that in this day and age? So they've suddenly lost the productivity of absolutely dozens and dozens and dozens of people. Really interesting. And only senior people were given laptops, and slightly crappy ones as well, as I understand it. So how do you deal with that? So the IT infrastructure, the health infrastructure, which Kieran's brought up to us, the 2-meter rule and all that sort of stuff that's happening, cleanliness. We talked about how do you keep your customers. We've heard the survive, thrive, and rebuild from Shiraz. I'd like to just hear any more ideas from any of you that haven't spoken yet about the kinds of things that we could be doing to manage the 100 days and the 1,000 days. And obviously we heard from Tim about how hard it is to look to 1,000 days at this moment, right, Tim? It's really challenging. So there's Sancho, Paul, James, Terence, Rajiv, Praful, Mehrdad. Mehrdad must have your logo behind your door as well, a bit like Tim. So I open it up. Sam, of course, looking directly at me with this wonderful photograph. So let me just stop for a second. Anyone, any particular comments that you'd like to make? Yeah, Praful, please. To unmute yourself, or somebody needs to unmute you.
Yeah, it got unmuted by magic, so yes.
Yeah, great.
No, so I thanks for this. So I also, I've been seeing so many startups going about, okay, new world, new change dynamics, and many people are talking about pivot, many people are talking about perseverance. So there's always this question about pivot versus perseverance in the new world, because many things are not changed, say customers, but market conditions, investors, but sentiments have changed, and they will revive. So when should a startup persevere and when should it pivot? That's a critical question as well. You should not pivot unnecessarily, or we should not persevere unnecessarily. So that's another point in this discussion when you talk about 100 days and 1,000 days, because when we talk about 1,000 days, it is pretty much a 100-day pivot will lead to 1,000-day product then. But if you're tackling just 100 days and going past that, and Shiraz mentioned it, survive, thrive, and revive. So if you can survive, why to pivot? That's basically a question about pivot versus perseverance.
Well, I'm going to throw that directly in Frank's direction, because I think he's seen more than his fair share in the travel industry of, when do you change direction versus when you persevere and keep going. By coincidence, we both know the co-founder of a company called Active Hotels, which indeed became part of the travel industry solutions. Frank, can I throw that one in your direction?
Sure. There's no way to go for travel, is there? Booking and Expedia, both are companies that have over 20,000 people globally working for them. It's not a company that can now reinvent itself and start selling a smaller product from scratch and then see how it's going to turn out. So they need to refocus or stay focused on the product they have. But there's a lot of work they haven't done in the past few years in building their platform. Think about cloud, for instance. I know one of them is not fully cloud enabled. It's a great opportunity now to when there's less traffic on your platform, to start doing some cloud exercises and truly finalize them. So the 100 days is for every type of company different. I think it's and size definitely helps. And you talked about startups. Startups have the opportunity to be way more flexible. And if there are some customers, then this is a great time to listen to what they truly need. It's hey, is it the adjustment of that small report that's going to help them through this? Is it so? What is it actually going to help to make sure the customers can stay, and that you can build a relationship? So longer term, you can figure out hey, what else can you actually keep on selling to these type of customers? Or for travel, this is super challenging. There's basically nothing happening. And when you've got over 20,000 people depending on their payroll it's hard. And that's why I started my story with just like, hey, you need to care, you need to ask, you need to take the human approach. It's not that like the financials are not done. They have a daily routine on their financials. They know exactly where they are. They know exactly what the runway is and like how long they can keep up. They also know exactly who's backing them and can help them out if like they need somewhat longer runway. So they're pretty ready for this significant challenge, although it's going to hurt significantly. But if you're a startup, I would think this is an amazing time. This is the time to really figure out like, hey, what are the products? And it's already in this call that you find that there's very valuable information of businesses that have been around for a longer time that need to make a transition to an online marketing channel, an online sales channel, the distribution channels. So how come Amazon and others can still distribute their goods while others have such a difficulty? It's like, hey, is this a great time to start actually testing some of these platforms? And I'm pretty sure there's startups that are out there that will use the latest technology to make sure they can do it a lot faster than others.
Yeah, I think on this question of pivot or persevere, it's a really interesting question. And I think, Frank, you answered it in a slightly different way as well. It said, go listen to your customers. You know, they'll tell you what they need.
Yes.
You know, that's probably the starting point for that debate. I know that Praful and Mehrdad of the same company have done some amazing Zoom webinars and completely transformed, as you said, Frank, the sales model from being face-to-face driven to becoming Zoom driven. And it's producing some very, very interesting results for them. I know that because I'm delighted to be on their board, so with Shiraz. So I'm really pleased that 3 of the board members are here with me today on this call. So let's turn to a couple of other videos that have come on. There's Chris Horton and Sancho. Would you like to input on your solutions that you're trying to find or the questions that arise? Yeah, please. Yeah. So Sancho, you put your hand up first. So let's unmute you. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, I just make some observations on some of the discussions that we've had. I think it's been a really interesting time, and one of the things that's most interesting about it is the world hasn't stopped. As has been outlined, Amazon still make their deliveries. Everybody can work. So I'm actually UK based, but I've been in Germany now for 3 months because I can't get back. But I've been able to work every day. I've been able to order stuff. I've been able to do pretty much whatever my clients have needed from here by video. Interestingly, some of the companies that have more difficulty with the video sales process or some of the video conferencing have been video conferencing companies, which has been rather amusing. So it's rather difficult to sell a service to somebody if you can't actually make it work yourself. But I think one of the big observations here is that for change management and for looking at opportunities, this has been an enormous step forward because everybody now knows technology will work and you can work from home. And everybody knows, particularly the millennial generation, can now turn around and say, well, actually, I don't want to work for a company that won't allow me that flexibility occasionally because I know technically it can work. And it's not the case that you can just choose to do it when it's a disaster.
Yeah, the new normal.
Not do it normally. And so there are lots of opportunities and lots of challenges around employment. The new normal is important, yes. There are lots and lots of opportunities around that. One of my other projects is actually environmentally based and strangely is looking at carbon removal from the atmosphere. So the travel industry is quite interesting to us because there are opportunities now to be able to use this focus that people have because strangely now all of the emissions are slowing down and we can all see the stars for once and we can breathe cleaner air. You know, to look at travel companies and say, well, are there other ways for you to build services that are greener and still allow people to travel? Because people will still need to do that. People still need to meet people, but the pressure needs to be put in places to make that happen. So, for example, can big business in those types of areas be pushing governments to push the economies in the right direction? And there are lots of opportunities in those economies, like using hydrogen as a fuel, for example. So I think with all of the infrastructure and all of the sort of challenges to daily life and business life that people are experiencing and overcoming, that there's a change in attitude now where people will see a better way forward and more progress. There will be fewer barriers. And I'm seeing that I have a, strangely enough, not far from where you are at the from the Bradfield Centre on the Cambridge Science Park, an incredibly conservative scientific organisation who are now turning around and saying, well, yeah, this homeworking lot works, doesn't it? And actually, why we should really put all of our services in the cloud, shouldn't we? So I've been doing IT and management consultancy for them, and they've been very averse to this, but no, it's like, yeah, fine, everything's going in the cloud, we're happy with that. And then even to one slightly further, another more ambitious idea, which is, do we really need this office building? We can all work from home, why do we need an office? Oh, let's just get rid of it and take the cash. Probably not quite a sensible thing to do in the climate, but the new normal is giving lots of new opportunities. Obviously, when you're in distribution and things, it's slightly different challenge, but actually I think for a significant part of the economy, there are now big opportunities to move forward into, trying not to speak in cliches, but I'm going to have to go for one now, a brighter new world.
Yeah, maybe also more friendly new world. I know we're going to run up against the clock, so I just wanted to, Chris, you were about to say something as well, and then I'll make a couple of closing remarks and then hand back to Frank before we wrap up.
Yeah, nothing too insightful from me really, because a lot of it's been covered. But certainly, I think one of our biggest challenges, we've by as much luck as good judgment, found ourselves in a relatively robust period at the moment. But equally, not knowing really, part of the reason for the robustness is that our customers were relatively slow to respond starting off, but they'll also be potentially relatively slow to pick up, coming out of it. And so the balance of, are they slow to pick up, or has their business model changed, is quite a challenge. And how long do you sort of put in for that? And the discussions are ongoing, so that two-way dialogue is important. But also, as you may remember, Shai, we do a lot within agri-tech as well as in automotive, and obviously agri-tech is certainly coming to the fore again. And so, how much of our effort we put into these brave new world type developments, how much we put investment into pursuing our previous customer model, if you like, and the balance between the two. And the other interesting one from a cash flow perspective is that a lot of the automotive stuff we do is very long lead time, from even receiving order to being paid for goods is very long. And so even if we look in a sensible cash position now, if we do the full product cycle of order to payment, we have challenges in 6, 8, 12 months time that even if we came out of this and the shops open straight away, we can't exactly guarantee where we're going to be. So certainly nothing in the business toolbox really suits for that, does it? And trying to keep in contact is key. But the final thing I'd also say is that, keeping in touch with the sort of the whole supply chain and your employees to keep the engagement has been really interesting, and I'd echo that. Some people have done a lot more than we have. We've been quite surprised with what we have done in a way, because we're such a small company that we've sort of just got on with it and sort of been doing a lot of the morning meetings, the sort of more casual stuff. And I echo, it's a fantastic way to keep people on board and to try and help the process, isn't it?
It certainly is. There is Madad who's got CR on his door. Always tease him whether CR is facing this way or is the entrance to his office the other way. But they have been looking, by way of introduction, they've been looking at completely reshaping the delivery model that they have, from sending out engineers to install kit to then loosely, and I don't mean this in any disrespect whatsoever, the IKEA model, which is to send out instructions for customers to install the kit themselves. But I don't want to talk about that and just bounce you into it. I'm hoping you'll come back to a future webinar on managing supply chains and all, extending the runway, and give the option for you to disclose as much as you want on that topic. I know it's a very creative solution that the company has come up with. Just by way of closing, we have written a little blog to accompany this, which is an article on the LinkedIn profile. So I didn't want to kind of grind through that on a bullet point by bullet point, but it's about how would you ultimately create a checklist that is appropriate and relevant for your needs, for your companies. Hopefully you've got some ideas kicking around as a result of the conversation with each other. What I'd like to just to say briefly is that we have, of course, got 2 more of these planned for this month. Next week, the same time, same channel, as it were. And Frank has very kindly agreed to come on as a panel. You can see we run this quite informally to try and get as many of you to talk to each other. Those of you I missed this time, if you guys are back next time, we'll try and hear your voices on this. We also have hashtags. Do follow the conversation via LinkedIn and Twitter, please, and amplify the message. The more companies we can help out and support through this 100 days, 1,000 days, is part of what we need to be doing, and we're all, I guess, of that spirit. So, I think that's as much as I want to say, apart from really delighted to have seen you. But Frank, let me ask you to maybe make a couple of closing observations from the discussion so far.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. It's like, I think the part I enjoyed most is the fact that everybody spoke up about their specific situation and having the first glance of solutions. And the situation we're in is like nobody has experienced before. So it like if we experience this as hard, this should be hard. And we can't do it on our own. It's like, hey, we need people around us where we can, we also need to complain about the shit we're in. But let's complain together and see, it's like, hey, how we can help one another out. We can't complain all day. It's like, hey, we also need to listen. We also need to share our ideas, and we need to rotate the role we have in that process. And I really appreciate that, like, finally what happened, Shai, in this call is when people mentioned solutions, when people said like, hey, this is hard. Cash flow is something that's very close to my heart. Spend your money wisely. It's something we've all been brought up with, and over time in our lives, we get somewhat more cash, and we keep always on spending it on the right things. And we shouldn't change. It's like we're in a business, we have a significant responsibility. Keep on spending it wisely, and it is hard. It's not easy, and it makes you wonder now and then if you're doing the right thing, and that's the right approach.
Frank, that's a very helpful remark, because today was kind of the big picture about the 100 days, 1,000 days, just to start to build dialogues around this. The next one is very much more about the finance issues. By the title of the next webinar is Extending the Runway. So we will come back to the issue of cash and finance definitely through that. And we'll tell you the one after that was also more focused, if you will, the way we want to run that topic and webinar. But I'm hoping very much this has been a bit of a stimulus, a little bit of a break from some of the other things that you're doing, and a bit of airtime for you to meet and chat with each other. I look forward to seeing you guys, and maybe others too, next week. So thank you very much for taking part, and hopefully you've had something out of it. Take care. Bye now. Bye.
Hi, Shai.
Hi, Len.
So,
Well, thank you for the little reminders on the side. It's most helpful of you to have done that.
perfect. So, no, I just stopped the recording now because we got it.
Yeah.